We're restructuring our training department to better align with millennial consumer expectations. That's how 25 years of building retail excellence got flushed down the corporate toilet by a 28-year-old VP who thought experience was something you could download from a LinkedIn learning course. No meeting, no warning, no acknowledgement that I'd personally trained every single store manager currently keeping their pathetic excuse for a retail empire from collapsing like a house of cards in a hurricane. Just Brittany Walsh, fresh from her MBA program and armed with buzzwords like digital native leadership paradigms, explaining to me that my traditional mentoring approach was no longer compatible with their agile retail transformation strategy. My name is Margaret, and I'd spent a quarter-century turning clueless college graduates into retail managers who could actually manage something other than their own Instagram feeds. 25 years of teaching kids who thought customer service meant posting smiley face emojis how to handle the kind of retail disasters that turn Black Friday into Black Eye Friday. I'd built the training program at Prestige Retail Group from absolutely nothing, back when the company was 3 stores and a prayer, turning it into the gold standard that our competitors tried to copy and failed miserably because they didn't understand that retail management isn't a science, it's an art form that requires the patience of a saint, the diplomacy of a UN negotiator, and the crisis management skills of a battlefield medic. But according to Brittany and her PowerPoint presentation titled Optimizing Human Capital Through Generational Workforce Dynamics, I was a legacy resource whose analog management philosophy was incompatible with their customer-centric digital ecosystem. In other words, I was too old for retail. The irony was so thick you could sell it by the pound in the clearance section. This conversation happened on a Tuesday afternoon in Brittany's corner office, which she'd decorated with motivational posters about disrupting traditional paradigms and a collection of succulents that she probably bought because some lifestyle blogger told her plants would make her seem more grounded and authentic. She was wearing what I recognized as a knockoff designer blazer, the kind of thing that looks expensive until you've spent 25 years teaching people how to spot quality merchandise, and she had that particular brand of confidence that comes from never having experienced real failure. "Margaret," she said, using the tone you'd use to explain basic math to a toddler, "I want you to understand that this isn't personal. It's strategic. We're moving toward a more streamlined, technology-forward approach to management development. The data shows that our target demographic responds better to peer-to-peer learning and gamified training modules." I sat there listening to her explain how my life's work could be replaced by an app, wondering if she'd ever tried to explain to a 19-year-old assistant manager why you can't just ignore a customer having a meltdown in the middle of your busiest sales day because it's not part of your job description. Had she ever talked down a store manager who was 2 hours into a 12-hour shift and ready to walk out because corporate had just announced another efficiency initiative that doubled their workload without increasing their staff? The feedback from our recent management survey, Brittany continued, consulting her tablet like it contained the secrets of the universe, indicates that our younger managers prefer more collaborative, less hierarchical training experiences. They want mentors who understand their communication style and cultural references. What she meant was, they wanted trainers who would validate their feelings instead of teaching them how to do their jobs. "I see," I said, keeping my voice level and professional because I'd learned, over 25 years of retail management, that the moment you let your emotions show in a corporate setting is the moment they write you off as difficult or not a team player. "And what about the managers I've already trained? The ones currently running your most profitable stores?" Brittany's smile had all the warmth of a freezer case in January. "Oh, don't worry about transition issues. We've developed a comprehensive knowledge transfer protocol. Your successor will have access to all your training materials and methodologies." My successor? A 24-year-old named Trevor who'd graduated 6 months ago with a degree in business management and whose retail experience consisted of working part-time at his college bookstore. Trevor, who'd already suggested that we could optimize customer engagement by having managers wear headsets so they could multitask during customer interactions. Trevor, who thought team building meant organizing group chats and believed that employee motivation could be measured through emoji reactions to company announcements. Trevor was going to take over a training program that I'd spent 25 years developing, refining, and adapting to the real-world chaos of retail management. He was going to mentor store managers who dealt with everything from shoplifting rings to emotional support peacocks to customers who tried to return Christmas decorations in July. He was going to guide people through the kind of workplace crises that you can't solve with gamification and peer-to-peer learning modules. The meeting lasted exactly 14 more minutes, during which Brittany explained my transition timeline, 2 weeks to document my institutional knowledge and facilitate a smooth handover to Trevor, and outlined my severance package, which was generous enough to suggest they knew exactly how badly they were screwing up but not generous enough to make me feel better about it. I walked out of that office with the dignity of someone who'd been professionally executed by people who confused competence with competence, carrying a box of personal items that represented 25 years of turning retail chaos into retail success. My desk had accumulated the kinds of things you collect when you actually care about your work: thank you cards from managers I'd trained, photos from store openings I'd helped orchestrate, and a small collection of world's best mentor mugs that my trainees had given me over the years, the kind of genuine appreciation that doesn't show up in performance metrics or quarterly reports. The security guard who walked me to my car was Miguel Santos, who'd started as a part-time security associate 8 years ago and worked his way up to head of loss prevention after I'd recommended him for the management training program. "This is messed up, Mrs. Margaret," he said, shaking his head as we walked through the parking lot. "Half the managers in this company wouldn't know how to handle a busy Saturday without your training." "Don't worry, Miguel," I said, patting his shoulder with the maternal affection I'd developed for everyone I'd helped succeed in this business. "I'm sure Trevor will figure out how to gamify crisis management." That evening, I sat in my home office with a glass of wine and my personal laptop, scrolling through the contact list I'd been building for 25 years. Not just names and phone numbers, but detailed records of every manager I'd trained, every store I'd helped open, every crisis I'd helped solve. I had current contact information for 43 store managers across 6 states, assistant managers who'd been promoted based on my recommendations, district supervisors who'd started as seasonal employees and worked their way up through programs I'd designed. More importantly, I had their trust. I'd been there when Jennifer Martinez got promoted to her first management position and called me crying at 11 p.m. because she didn't know how to handle an employee who was stealing from the register. I'd talked her through the documentation process, the confrontation, and the aftermath, teaching her that being a manager meant making difficult decisions with incomplete information and living with the consequences. I'd mentored David Kim through his first holiday season, when his store did triple their normal volume and he had to manage 12 temporary employees who'd never worked retail before. I'd taught him how to delegate without micromanaging, how to motivate people who were only planning to work for 6 weeks, and how to maintain quality standards when everything was moving at triple speed. I'd guided Amanda Rodriguez through the nightmare of a major product recall that happened during their biggest sale weekend of the year, helping her coordinate with corporate, manage customer expectations, and keep her team focused while dealing with hundreds of angry customers who wanted refunds, exchanges, or just someone to yell at. These weren't just professional relationships, they were mentoring bonds built through shared crises, late-night phone calls, and the kind of hands-on learning that you can't get from online modules or peer-to-peer collaboration platforms. By midnight, I drafted a carefully worded email that I sent to all 43 of my former trainees. Not a complaint about my treatment, not a criticism of Brittany's strategic restructuring, just a simple message: I'm exploring new opportunities in retail management consulting. If you'd like to discuss your career development or explore new challenges, I'm available for conversations. The responses started coming in within hours. Jennifer Martinez called at 6:30 a.m. on Thursday. "Mrs. Margaret, I heard what happened. This is insane. You're the reason half of us know how to do our jobs, and they're replacing you with someone who's never managed anything bigger than a college bookstore?" David Kim texted at 7:45 a.m., "Just heard the news. When you start your own thing, I want to be part of it. This company is making a huge mistake." Amanda Rodriguez sent an email at 8:15 a.m., "Margaret, I've been thinking about leaving Prestige anyway. They've been cutting hours and adding responsibilities, and morale is terrible. If you're starting something new, count me in." By Friday afternoon, I'd heard from 38 of my 43 former trainees, and the message was consistent: they were frustrated with the direction Prestige was heading, they missed having real mentorship and support, and they wanted to work for someone who understood that retail management was about people, not just profit margins. But the real entertainment started the following Monday, when Trevor began his first week as the new Director of Training and Management Development. I didn't have to wait long for the phone calls to start. The first crisis hit at 10:30 a.m. when Jennifer Martinez's store experienced what retail veterans call a perfect storm: a shoplifting incident that escalated into a physical altercation, a register system crash during the morning rush, and a delivery truck that showed up 3 hours early with a shipment that had nowhere to go because the stockroom was being renovated. Jennifer called Trevor for guidance and got transferred to voicemail. She called back and reached his assistant, who explained that Trevor was in a strategic planning session and couldn't be interrupted. The third time she called, Trevor answered and suggested she try to think outside the box for creative solutions and remember that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. Jennifer handled the situation using the crisis management protocols I'd taught her, but by lunchtime, she'd made a decision that would ripple through Prestige Retail Group like an earthquake through a house of cards. She called me. "Mrs. Margaret," she said, her voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who'd just survived a retail apocalypse, "I can't do this anymore. Trevor just told me that shoplifting incidents should be treated as customer engagement opportunities and that I should focus on building rapport with diverse community members instead of following loss prevention protocols. I'm done. When you start your consulting business, I want to work for you." The second call came at 2:15 p.m. from David Kim, whose store had just experienced a customer service nightmare involving a return policy dispute, a social media influencer, and what would eventually become a viral TikTok video about retail discrimination. David had tried to reach Trevor for guidance and been told to leverage the situation for brand awareness opportunities and consider how this interaction might enhance our digital footprint. David had resolved the situation using the de-escalation techniques I'd taught him. But like Jennifer, he'd reached his breaking point with Trevor's coaching methodology. By Wednesday, I was getting calls from managers who weren't just seeking advice, they were asking if I was serious about starting my own retail consulting business, because if I was, they wanted to quit Prestige and work for me instead. By Friday, the exodus had begun in earnest. If you're sitting there thinking, "No way could 1 week of bad training cause that much chaos," hit that subscribe button. Trust me, it gets so much better. The following Monday, Brittany Walsh called an emergency meeting with all district supervisors to address what she termed unusual turnover patterns in our management tier. What she didn't mention was that 7 of their most experienced store managers had submitted resignation letters over the weekend, and 3 more had formally requested transfers to different districts, specifically, districts where they might be assigned to work with different training supervisors. Trevor, meanwhile, had spent his first 2 weeks developing what he called the Retail Excellence Gamification Protocol, a point-based system where managers could earn badges for completing training modules, participating in online discussions, and sharing positive workplace moments on the company's internal social media platform. Managers could level up from retail rookie to customer service champion to sales superstar by accumulating enough points through peer nominations and self-assessment surveys. It was exactly as effective as you'd expect a video game approach to retail management to be, which is to say it was completely useless for anyone trying to actually manage a retail store. The real crisis hit 3 weeks after my departure, when Prestige's flagship store, the one that generated more revenue than any other location in the company, experienced what the local news would eventually call a complete operational breakdown. It started with a perfect storm of predictable retail disasters, a major sale weekend, understaffing due to budget cuts, a register system glitch, and a bus full of tourists who didn't speak English trying to return merchandise without receipts. The kind of situation that happens in retail about once a quarter and requires experienced management to navigate without turning into a public relations nightmare. The store manager, Lisa Chen, was one of my former trainees who decided to stay at Prestige rather than join the exodus. She'd been managing that location for 3 years and had successfully handled dozens of similar crises using the protocols I'd taught her. But corporate had recently implemented new escalation procedures that required managers to consult with district supervisors before deviating from standard policies, and district supervisors were required to consult with Trevor before approving any non-standard customer service approaches. Lisa spent 45 minutes trying to reach her district supervisor while her store descended into chaos. Customers were posting videos on social media of the long lines, the malfunctioning registers, and what one particularly creative TikTok user described as the retail apocalypse happening in real time. When she finally reached her supervisor, she was told she needed to wait for Trevor to approve her request to offer store credit for returns without receipts. Trevor was in a leadership development workshop and couldn't be reached. By the time someone finally authorized Lisa to use common sense and basic customer service skills to resolve the situation, the damage was done. The videos had gone viral, local news stations had picked up the story, and Prestige Retail Group was trending on social media for all the wrong reasons. The headline in the local business journal read, "Retail Giant's flagship store melts down during busy weekend." The article included quotes from customers describing the experience as complete chaos and like watching a company forget how to be a company. Brittany Walsh called another emergency meeting to discuss operational communication protocols and crisis management optimization strategies. What she really wanted to discuss was why their most experienced managers were quitting and why the ones who stayed seemed unable to handle situations they'd managed successfully for years. The answer was obvious to anyone who'd ever worked in retail. You'd systematically dismantled the support system that helped managers succeed, replaced institutional knowledge with gamification protocols, and created a bureaucratic nightmare that prevented people from doing their jobs effectively. But admitting that would have required acknowledging that firing me had been a catastrophic mistake, and corporate executives don't typically excel at that kind of self-reflection. Instead, Brittany announced a new retail excellence initiative that would provide additional training and support to managers who were struggling to adapt to our enhanced operational frameworks. The initiative would be led by Trevor, who would be developing innovative mentorship solutions and peer-to-peer skill-sharing networks. It was like announcing that the solution to a house fire was more gasoline and a bigger match. That's when I made my move. I'd spent 6 weeks quietly meeting with my former trainees, not to recruit them away from Prestige, but to understand what they wanted from their careers and what kind of support they needed to succeed. The conversations weren't about revenge or competition, they were about building something better. What I discovered was that these experienced managers were hungry for the kind of mentorship and professional development that Prestige had abandoned in favor of cost-cutting and buzzword-driven initiatives. They wanted to work for a company that understood retail as a relationship-based business, not just a numbers game. They wanted leadership that supported their professional growth instead of treating them as interchangeable resources in an efficiency optimization strategy. So I gave them exactly what they wanted. On a Thursday morning in November, I walked into the office of Victoria Sterling, the CEO of Sterling Development Group, a commercial real estate company that specialized in retail spaces. Victoria and I had worked together years earlier when Prestige was expanding, and she'd always impressed me as someone who understood the difference between actual business strategy and corporate trend chasing. "Victoria," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk, "I have a proposition that might interest you. What would you say to opening a retail chain that's staffed entirely by managers who know what they're doing?" The conversation lasted 2 hours and ended with a handshake deal to launch Heritage Retail, a chain of mid-market stores that would focus on customer service, employee development, and the kind of retail experience that builds customer loyalty instead of just processing transactions. Victoria provided the initial funding and real estate expertise. I provided something more valuable, a team of experienced managers who already trusted each other and understood how to work together effectively. Within 2 weeks, I'd signed contracts with 12 of my former trainees who wanted to be store managers and assistant managers in the new chain. Within a month, we'd secured lease agreements for 4 locations in markets where Prestige had stores but wasn't dominant. Within 6 weeks, we were hiring employees and conducting training sessions in empty retail spaces, preparing for grand openings that would put my 25 years of retail knowledge directly in competition with the company that had decided I was too old to be valuable. The poetic justice was that we were using all the training methods, customer service protocols, and management strategies that I'd developed at Prestige, the same institutional knowledge that Brittany had thought could be easily transferred to Trevor and his gamification protocols. Except now, instead of training managers to work for a company that didn't value experience, I was training them to build a company that did. Our first store opened on a Saturday morning in February, in a shopping center exactly 2 miles from Prestige's second highest revenue location. We'd spent weeks preparing for opening day, training our staff not just on procedures and policies, but on the philosophy that customer service is a conversation, not a transaction, and that retail management is about supporting people, not just processing sales. Jennifer Martinez was our store manager, David Kim was her assistant manager, and Amanda Rodriguez was running our customer service training program. The opening day staff included 8 former Prestige employees who'd followed their managers to Heritage Retail, bringing with them the kind of customer knowledge and product expertise that takes years to develop. By noon, we had a line of customers that stretched halfway across the parking lot, not because we were offering massive discounts or promotional gimmicks, but because word had spread that this was a store where the employees actually knew what they were doing and cared about helping customers find what they needed. By closing time, we'd exceeded our optimistic first-day sales projections by 40%, and our customer satisfaction surveys were averaging 4.8 out of 5 stars. The second store opened 3 weeks later, managed by 2 more of my former trainees, and performed even better. The third and fourth stores opened simultaneously in April, and by then, local business media was covering Heritage Retail as a retail success story and an example of how experienced management can create competitive advantages in a challenging market. Meanwhile, Prestige was experiencing what their quarterly report euphemistically described as management retention challenges and operational efficiency optimization requirements. In plain English, they were hemorrhaging experienced managers, their customer satisfaction scores were plummeting, and their most profitable stores were struggling to maintain the kind of service standards that retain customers in a competitive market. Trevor's retail excellence gamification protocol had achieved exactly what you'd expect from trying to turn retail management into a video game. Managers were focused on earning badges and accumulating points instead of learning how to handle customer crises, employee conflicts, and the 1,000 daily challenges that make retail management one of the most demanding jobs in business. The managers who stayed at Prestige were either too inexperienced to understand how dysfunctional the system had become, or too close to retirement to want to start over somewhere else. The result was a company that was slowly forgetting how to provide the kind of customer experience that builds long-term business relationships. By summer, Prestige had closed 3 underperforming stores and was actively recruiting experienced managers from their competitors, offering signing bonuses and accelerated promotion tracks to anyone with proven retail leadership experience. They were paying premium prices to replace the institutional knowledge they'd thrown away when they decided I was too old for retail. The final piece of poetic justice came in August, when Brittany Walsh was transitioned to a strategic consulting role, corporate speak for, demoted to a position where she can't do any more damage, and Trevor was reassigned to digital marketing optimization, where his enthusiasm for gamification and peer-to-peer engagement could be channeled towards something that didn't involve actual people management. Prestige's new VP of Human Resources called me personally to ask if I'd be interested in returning as a senior consultant for management development at a salary that was 60% higher than what they'd been paying me before they decided to optimize me out of existence. I listened politely to the offer, took notes on their proposed benefits package, and thanked them for their interest in my expertise. Then I told them I was too busy building a company that understood the value of experience. These days, Heritage Retail operates 12 stores across 4 states, employs over 200 people, and maintains customer satisfaction ratings that consistently outperform our larger competitors. I serve as Chief Training Officer for a company that treats employee development as an investment rather than an expense, and where traditional mentoring approaches are considered a competitive advantage rather than a liability. My office has a window that looks out over the parking lot of our flagship store, where I can watch customers choosing to shop with us instead of the big chains that prioritize efficiency metrics over actual service. On my desk, I keep a small collection of World's Best Mentor mugs, some from my Prestige days, and some from Heritage employees who understand that learning from experience isn't a legacy concept that needs to be disrupted. It's a foundation that builds successful businesses. Jennifer Martinez is now our regional manager for the Eastern District, overseeing 6 stores and training the next generation of retail leaders. David Kim runs our employee development program, teaching new managers the crisis management skills that can't be gamified or reduced to point-based achievement systems. Amanda Rodriguez opened our training academy, where we offer certification programs for retail professionals who want to advance their careers based on actual competence rather than algorithmic assessment scores. Last month, I got a LinkedIn message from Trevor, who was looking for new opportunities in retail management consulting after his digital marketing optimization role was eliminated in another round of corporate restructuring. He'd heard about Heritage Retail's success and wondered if we might have opportunities for someone with his innovative approach to workforce development. I sent him a polite response suggesting that he might want to get some hands-on retail management experience before moving into consulting, and recommended that he start with an entry-level position at a company where he could learn from experienced managers. I didn't mention that most of those experienced managers were probably people I'd trained. Some lessons are best learned through experience, not through gamification protocols or peer-to-peer learning modules. And some companies are smart enough to recognize that wisdom doesn't become obsolete just because it comes from someone who remembers when customer service meant actually serving customers. Thanks for watching, you retail warriors. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Unless you're currently replacing your experienced staff with innovative training solutions, in which case, good luck explaining to your board why your most profitable stores are suddenly operating like amateur hour at the Customer Service Academy. Some bridges are worth burning when you're building something better on the other side.